Well, hello and welcome back to Lap of the World. I'm Richard, and if this is your first time watching, this is the channel where I am normally attempting to document my efforts to drive as many racetracks as I can. However, without getting into too much more detail, if that sounds interesting to you, don't forget to subscribe. But at the moment, we are making a push to finish sort of a moderate refresh on the Gallardo here, in order to actually go one horse around with it, and then also make room in the garage for the NSX to get it sort of, just a couple of quick maintenance items, normal maintenance items knocked out in anticipation of our next track day, and then after that, NS Expo. So, if you watched the last video, I was dealing with some transmission fluid shenanigans, missing or reused crush washers and fun stuff like that. Today, we're going to be tackling, my hope is in this video to cover tackling both the replacing the fuel door bucket, which was torn, and then also mocking up at the very least, if not finishing, or at least not getting done with some fabrication, to mount our, so you're behind me on the floor here, our 2008 Gallardo Spyder exhaust in our 2004 Gallardo coupe. So it should not be too involved. It's actually pretty simple. I found some pretty easy to follow directions online, which I'll put a link to in the comments, or rather in the video description, just so you can see where I got my information from. I'll credit the source. I'm happy to do so. So, without any further ado, let's get started. I think we're going to tackle the gas cap situation first. So here is the fuel door bucket assembly surround. Can't remember what I can never land on what to call this thing, but it is the part that kind of interfaces between the filler neck and the cap. Now I've removed the gas cap. It normally would have been pinned in here and sort of flapped over the top of this. And then it has this rubber flashing in the bottom that goes around the filler neck. Now I thought I was going to get lucky because the plastic, or it's like FRP, it has an Audi part number on it that actually cross-referenced to a European model A2. Now the reason this didn't work is because in the A2, it being kind of a normal, I think it's a hatchback, it'd be situated like this. And the Gallardo, it's situated like this, which means that this rubber molding, refocus here real quick, the rubber molding in the bottom here, which is what was torn, is actually unique to the Gallardo, even though this upper plastic piece, whatever this is molded off of, is a generic part that's used for a couple of different applications at the very least. The rubber flashing is unfortunately, which is, the lower third of this, is actually unique to the Lamborghini, it seems. So I had to order one of these at, instead of $20, it was like $200. Cost of doing business, I guess. But nonetheless, I have it. Right, and here is the new item installed on the car. Now, part of what I had to do here was remove the filler neck. I actually had to pull it out of the car because what happens there is there's a metal flange on the filler neck near the top that then sandwiches the rubber skirting between the flange on the filler neck and a bracket underneath, which creates your seal. Now I don't have all the screws in there yet because I didn't have all the screws. Those are in the mail currently and will be installed once I have them, which will cover that off, except for that hole in the very bottom, which is the drain, like overflow or water drain tube to keep this thing from, filling up if you spill gas or if, you're caught in a monsoon or something. Now, in order to do that, we had to get into the right rear wheel well and remove the front half of the fender liner. Easy because the rear half was already out for the, exhaust and bumper shenanigans. So we could get to where the filler neck connects to the gas tank via this rubber hose. So we undid one hose clamp on the top and were able to pull the filler neck out the top before installing the bucket and then reinstalling the filler neck on top of that, creating the little sandwich effect that we talked about with a bracket. So all I have to do now is tighten up that last hose clamp, and then once I have the additional screws in the mail, install those as well as a drain tube, and the fuel filler area should be all set. Well, it's a new day, and as you can tell, we now also have the new exhaust on the car. Now I'm going to rewind a little bit, and I'll show you how we got to this point by using some sophisticated CAD techniques to design and build some adapter brackets to fit the newer model 2008 Spyder muffler and tailpipe assembly on this 2004 first-year Gallardo. First, I used the original 2 lower mounts as well as some furniture and loose sporting goods to position the muffler. I then pulled up my CAD suite to create a rough template in place on the car and marked where the supports would need to attach. Next, I imported my CAD template onto my desktop and used a solvent-based graphical user interface to trace the template onto some 1/8-inch thick aluminum plate. Some cutting and drilling happened along with a hardware run, and there you have them in their final position here. Again, that uses factory mounting holes for the top of the plate, or to attach the plate to the car rather. They aren't pretty, but they will do the job. That's 1/8-inch aluminum plate stressed in tension, so in this muffler assembly, it's not light, but I'd say it probably doesn't weigh more than 30 pounds. So there's no way, you're not going to be able to tear that aluminum sheet lengthwise there with just that amount of weight. So, the good thing is I don't feel the need to pretty that up too much because nobody's ever going to see these. It's going to be hidden by the wheel well fender liners from one direction and the bumper cover from the other direction. So I think I'm set, and I am calling it a day there. All right, well, that's a good day's work. It's, a couple days' work. So we can now refuel the car with hopefully less concern about it going up in flames. And we can also, hopefully, once it's on the road, it'll be able to be driven around both polite company as well as in events that have sound policies. So there's some wins right there. Now, before I button everything back up, I'm going to take care of a few more things, namely some heat shielding in a couple of critical places, as well as, since I changed the exhaust, the heat's going to be in a different, the hot parts are going to be slightly different from where they were. So I just want to make sure that nothing gets more heat than it was designed to get. But the other thing I'm going to do is try and reconstitute the aftermarket reverse camera that came with the car. It's installed, the trigger's on the head unit, but it doesn't work. It hasn't worked since when I bought the car. And I quickly found out why once I pulled the bumper off, and that's because whatever shop in San Diego installed it, I'm guessing ran the wiring down to it probably against the exhaust. And the only protection they gave it was some plastic, like corrugated plastic tubing, which again proceeded to melt, and then the wires proceeded to melt, and I'm sure they shorted against each other as they melted together, and that at some point precipitated one of the previous owners from just disconnect it. So I've untangled the rat's nest that I'll flash up on the screen here, and I've cut it back to the point where I can cleanly splice it and then run it through some legitimate heat shielding before I connect it back to the camera, which I think the camera probably works. I won't have any way of testing it until I get it wired, but I've also found where I could replace the camera for not a whole lot of money. So I'll see if I can do that. And then the only other stuff I've got going before I can actually start driving the car, that's kind of that obviously is not a mission critical item. I have a neck, it still rotates, so I can reverse a car. But I do need to do the coolant hoses. Now, getting to the coolant hoses means I need to get on top of the car and to the very front of the engine bay, and I'm short, so I need it on the ground. So I'm trying to get everything taken care of that I need to take care of the car in the air before I then put it on the ground and address the coolant hoses. But that is a video for another day. For now, I'm going to sign off. I am Richard. This is Lap of the World, and I will see you in the next video, if not at the track.